We live in a time of infinite information, and yet, wisdom has never been more rare. Take a moment and let that sink in. With just one tap of your finger, you can access the knowledge of the entire human race: ideas, discoveries, philosophies, histories, all at your fingertips. And yet, despite this incredible access, we find ourselves surrounded by confusion, chaos, and a collective shallowness that is spreading like a silent fog. Every day, we scroll through endless images, articles, and videos. But how often do we pause and ask ourselves, am I truly learning, truly connecting with truth, or am I simply being swept away by an ocean of distraction? This is not just about individuals losing focus. It's not just about you, or me, or the choices we make online. This is a collective phenomenon, a spiritual sickness of our time. It seeps into our schools, our media, our governments, and even into the most intimate spaces of our lives, like our families and friendships. And perhaps the most frightening part, we've gotten used to it. We've come to see this noise, this chaos, as normal, like living in a house that's slowly flooding, but convincing ourselves the water isn't rising. When I sit quietly and reflect, I see how deeply this illusion runs. We have mistaken information for wisdom, and they are not the same. Information is everywhere, scattered, loud, constantly moving. Wisdom, on the other hand, is quiet. It's patient. It's the stillness beneath the storm. And in today's world, that stillness is harder and harder to find. It's as if society has been caught in a trance. We've become addicted to the quick hit of stimulation, the click, the like, the notification. Our devices are designed not to nourish us, but to hook us. They keep our minds fragmented, never resting long enough to go deeper. And just like a body that survives on sugar instead of real food, our minds and souls are starving. Even as we consume more than ever, we think we are connected to each other, to the world. But often, this connection is just an illusion. Have you ever been in a room full of people, everyone staring at their screens, and felt utterly alone? That's because real connection doesn't happen through algorithms. It happens through presence, through truly seeing and being seen. And we've traded that sacred presence for the endless scroll. This loss of depth shows up everywhere. Look at our education systems. Once, they were meant to awaken minds, to teach people how to think, question, and create. Now, they often feel like factories producing students who can memorize and repeat, but who struggle to think independently. Look at our media. What was once meant to inform and inspire now often rewards the loudest, the most shocking, the most divisive voices. Truth is slow and patient, but lies are quick and dramatic. Guess which one goes viral? And as this continues, society begins to drift further apart. We stop listening to each other. We stop seeing nuance. Everything becomes a fight. My side versus your side. My truth versus your truth. But in that fight, something precious is lost. The space where understanding and growth can happen. It's like watching a river split into smaller and smaller streams until the water runs shallow, no longer strong enough to nourish the land. But here's something I want you to remember. This decline is not inevitable. Yes, we are living through a time of great noise and confusion. But that doesn't mean we are powerless. In fact, in moments like this, the role of the awakened individual becomes even more important. Think of yourself as a lighthouse on a dark, stormy coast. You may feel small. Your light may seem faint compared to the roaring waves of distraction around you. But a single point of light can guide countless ships to safety. In the same way, one person choosing to live with awareness can create ripples that touch more lives than they will ever know. The first step is simply to notice. Notice how you engage with the world. Notice when you're being drawn into the whirlpool of noise and reaction. And most of all, notice the quiet voice within you, the part that longs for truth, for depth, for real connection. From there, the path unfolds naturally. It doesn't require grand gestures or public declarations. Sometimes, it's as simple as pausing before you speak, listening instead of rushing to respond, choosing to read something nourishing instead of something shallow, having a real conversation instead of chasing likes or shares. These small acts may seem insignificant, but they are powerful. Each one is a vote for a different kind of world. The world will tell you that you are just one person, that you can't make a difference. But history tells us otherwise. Throughout time, it has always been a small group of awakened individuals who spark change, who refuse to be swept away by the tide of unconsciousness. They were not louder than the world, but they were clearer. And clarity has a way of cutting through the noise. So tonight, before you go to sleep, I invite you to take a moment. Sit quietly, breathe, feel your own presence beneath the chaos of the day. And as you rest, remember this: you are not powerless. You are not here to drown in a sea of distractions. You are here to bring light, to bring depth, to bring wisdom back into a world that desperately needs it. Because when enough of us choose presence over noise, clarity over confusion, and truth over illusion, something incredible happens. The fog begins to lift, the water recedes, and what remains is a society that remembers what it means to be truly awake. The choice begins with you. In this very moment, 1. Misinformation travels faster than truth. There's a quiet ache that comes from living in a world where lies seem to have wings, while truth drags its feet, struggling to keep up. You've probably felt it yourself scrolling through your phone, watching stories spread like wildfire. Stories that are shocking, sensational, and often completely false. And yet, they move with such speed and force that they shape conversations, decisions, even the way entire communities see the world. A study from MIT revealed something startling: false information spreads 6 times faster than the truth. 6 times. When I first read that, I sat in silence. It wasn't just a statistic. It felt like a mirror held up to the age we're living in. An age where outrage seems to fuel the engine of society. And it's not by accident. Falsehoods are designed to travel quickly. They are crafted to grab your attention, to trigger something primal inside of you: fear, anger, excitement, disbelief. These stories bypass your logical mind and go straight to your emotions. And once your emotions are stirred, your finger is already hovering over the share button before you've even stopped to think. The seduction of the quick reaction. Our minds are wired for survival. Thousands of years ago, reacting quickly to danger kept our ancestors alive. If they heard a rustle in the bushes, it was safer to run first and question later. This instinct still lives within us. Today, when we encounter shocking news online, our brains respond as if it's that rustle in the bushes. Danger, threat, act. Now, the problem is, most of the time, there's no real danger. There's only the illusion of urgency, carefully crafted headlines, dramatic images, exaggerated claims. These tricks hijack our ancient wiring, flooding our systems with adrenaline and cortisol. And when we are caught in that storm of emotion, our rational mind goes quiet. This is why misinformation spreads so easily. It's not just about the content itself, it's about how it feels. Truth often asks us to slow down. It asks us to sit with complexity, to hold multiple perspectives, to wrestle with uncomfortable facts. Lies, on the other hand, are simple. They are clean, dramatic, and easy to digest. In a world addicted to speed and simplicity, guess which one people are more likely to click on, to believe, to share? The marketplace of attention. We live in what I call a marketplace of attention. In this marketplace, Your focus is the most valuable currency. Every app, every platform, every headline is fighting for a slice of it. The more intense your reaction, the more profit someone makes. Misinformation thrives here because it knows how to play the game. A shocking lie will always outperform a nuanced truth in the battle for clicks and shares. The algorithms don't care about integrity or accuracy. They care about engagement. If a post makes you angry, if it makes you laugh, if it makes you terrified, it wins. And when it wins, the machine feeds you more of the same. It's like a feedback loop that grows stronger and stronger. You click, you react, you share, and in doing so, you train the system to keep sending you more of what stirred you in the first place. Before long, your online world becomes an echo chamber, filled with distorted versions of reality that feel real because they are all you see. When emotion rules over reason, there's a moment I will never forget. A friend of mine sent me a news article, her voice shaking with anger. It was about an event so outrageous, so deeply wrong, that she couldn't believe it was happening. She was ready to take action, to rally others, to fight back. But when we looked closer, we realized the story wasn't true. It was fabricated from beginning to end, a carefully constructed illusion meant to provoke exactly the reaction she had. In that moment, I saw how easily our emotions can be weaponized. When we lead with anger instead of discernment, we become tools in someone else's agenda. It's like being handed a script and reading the lines without realizing you're part of a play you never agreed to join. And here's the thing. The people who create this chaos understand this perfectly. They know that an outraged population is easier to control. They know that when we're busy fighting each other over fabricated stories, we're too distracted to notice what's really happening behind the scenes. The subtle cost of living in a world of lies. The damage caused by misinformation isn't just political or societal. It's deeply personal. When you're constantly exposed to falsehoods, something inside you begins to erode. You start to question your own instincts. You feel exhausted, suspicious, unsure of what's real and what isn't. It's like trying to walk through a fog that never lifts. Over time, this can lead to a kind of spiritual numbness. You stop engaging deeply because it feels pointless. You stop seeking truth because you're overwhelmed by the sheer volume of noise. And that, perhaps, is the greatest victory for those who spread lies not just to mislead you, but to make you give up altogether, returning to the ground of truth. So, how do we begin to heal this? It starts, as most things do, with awareness. You can't stop every lie from spreading, but you can choose not to be its messenger. You can pause before reacting, take a breath before sharing, and ask yourself, who benefits from me believing this? From me passing it on? Truth may be slower, quieter, too less dramatic, but it has a strength that lies can never match. It's like a tree growing steadily in a forest. While wildfires rage around it, the fire burns bright and fast. But eventually, it dies out. The tree remains. When we align ourselves with truth, we become like that tree, rooted, steady, unshaken by the storms of misinformation. It doesn't mean we'll never feel anger or fear, but it means we won't be ruled by them. A closing reflection. As you move through this world of endless headlines and constant noise, remember this. Not every spark deserves to become a fire. Not every story deserves your attention. When lies move faster than truth, the most radical act you can take is to slow down, to breathe, to seek clarity in the midst of chaos. Because while falsehoods may dominate the moment, truth has a way of enduring. It waits for those who are willing to listen. And in a world built on speed and reaction, your willingness to pause may just be the light that helps others find their way home. 2. Losing connection to the past and our collective memory. There is a quiet kind of grief that comes when we forget where we came from. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, like the way a photograph fades when left too long in the sun. One day, you look at it, and the faces are blurred, the colors washed out, and you realize you no longer remember what those moments felt like. This is what has been happening to us as a society. Once, wisdom was carefully preserved. It lived in books, in sacred stories, passed from elders to children, in the songs and traditions that gave meaning to our lives. The past wasn't just something to study, it was something we carried within us, like a compass that quietly guided our steps. But now, in this age of endless information, the past has been replaced by an overwhelming present. New content appears every second, floating our screens, demanding our attention. It burns bright for a moment, a headline, a meme, a viral video, and then disappears, only to be replaced by something even louder. The result is a collective amnesia, a forgetting not only of history, but of ourselves, the wisdom of those who came before. There was a time when people understood that knowledge wasn't just about facts, it was about connection. Stories weren't told simply to entertain, they were woven with lessons about how to live, how to love, how to face hardship with courage. These stories were like threads, tying one generation to the next. They reminded us that we are part of something larger, a continuum of human experience stretching far beyond our individual lives. When we lose these threads, we lose more than memory. We lose context. We lose depth. And without that depth, we are like a tree without roots, easily toppled by the slightest wind. The past is not a burden meant to hold us back. It is the soil in which our present grows. When we cut ourselves off from it, we wither, even if on the surface we seem vibrant and alive. The speed of forgetting. In today's world, everything moves at a breathtaking pace. A story breaks, spreads across the globe in seconds, and is forgotten by tomorrow. We scroll endlessly, consuming fragments of information, rarely pausing to digest or reflect. Each piece of content replaces the last, leaving no time for understanding to take root. It's like trying to plant a seed in sand. You may scatter thousands of seeds, but none will grow because there's no stillness, no nourishment, no space for them to settle. This is why, even with more information than ever before, we feel increasingly empty. We are flooded with data but starved of meaning. The past, which once anchored us, now feels distant and irrelevant, like an old storybook gathering dust on a forgotten shelf, repeating the same mistakes. There's a saying, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. But it's not just a warning, it's a truth we are living every day. When we lose our collective memory, we stop recognizing patterns. We fall into the same traps, make the same mistakes, fight the same battles under different names. It's like walking in circles in a dense fog, unaware that we've been here before. History isn't just a series of events. It's a map of human behavior, showing us where greed leads, where compassion heals, where division destroys. Without that map, we wander blindly, mistaking old roads for new ones. And the saddest part is that we often believe we are progressing, when in reality, we are simply looping back to where we started. It's like a dream you keep having over and over, slightly different each time, but always leaving you with the same sense of déjà vu. The disconnection within ourselves, this collective forgetting, doesn't only affect our society, it affects us individually. When we lose touch with our shared history, we also lose touch with our inner history. We forget the lessons of our own lives, the pain we've endured, the healing we've found, the wisdom we've earned through experience. Think about a moment in your life when you learned something the hard way. Perhaps you promised yourself you'd never repeat that mistake. But over time, the memory faded, the sharpness of the lesson dulled, and one day, you found yourself in the same situation, wondering how you got there again. This happens to entire societies. 2. When we don't take the time to reflect, to remember, to honor what came before, we become trapped in cycles we can't see. We keep reenacting the same dramas, generation after generation, without realizing there is another way, finding our way back. The good news is that forgetting isn't permanent. Memory can be restored, both personally and collectively, but it requires intention. We must slow down. We must create space in our lives for reflection, space to sit with old stories, to listen to voices that have been silenced, to notice the patterns that run through our families, our cultures, our history. This doesn't mean clinging to the past or romanticizing it. It means integrating it, allowing its wisdom to inform the choices we make now. It's like weaving a tapestry. The past provides the threads, and the present is the loom. Without those threads, the tapestry of our future will unravel. A personal reflection. I remember sitting with my grandmother one evening as she told me stories of her childhood. Her voice was soft, her hands weathered by time. She spoke of hardships I'd never known, of values that seemed almost foreign to me. At first, I listened politely, thinking these were just quaint tales of a bygone era. But then I noticed something. The same struggles she faced were alive in my own life, just wearing different clothes. Her stories weren't relics of the past, they were mirrors, showing me truths I hadn't seen. That night, I realized how vital it is to stay connected to the stories of those who came before us. Without them, we are like travelers without a map, forever lost. A call to remember. As we move through this fast-paced, noisy world, it's tempting to let the past fade away. But if we want to build a future that is truly different, we must first remember. We must remember where we came from. We must remember the lessons carved into the bones of our ancestors. We must remember that we are part of something larger than ourselves. Because when we remember, we break the cycle. We step out of the loop and into conscious creation. And in that moment of remembrance, we rediscover not only our history, but our humanity. The past is not gone. It is alive in us, waiting to be acknowledged, waiting to guide us. All we have to do is pause, listen, and let it speak. When we do, we find that we are not wandering blindly. After all, we are part of an ancient story, one that stretches far behind us and far ahead, and one that we have the power to shape with every choice we make today. 3. Technology and social media, weakening our intelligence. There was a time when technology was a promise, a shining beacon of progress, a tool we believed would elevate our collective mind and connect us in ways we had never imagined. We dreamed of libraries without walls, of voices reaching across oceans, of knowledge freely shared with anyone willing to learn. And in many ways, that dream came true. But somewhere along the way, the very tools we built to enlighten us began to consume us instead. What was meant to serve us has started to master us. And now, we find ourselves staring into glowing screens, endlessly scrolling, not because we are seeking truth, but because we cannot look away. The trap hidden in plain sight. Social media and modern technology were designed with one promise: connection. But behind that promise is a complex machine powered by something far less noble: attention. Your attention, my attention, the collective attention of billions of people has become the most valuable resource on the planet. Every click, every swipe, every second your eyes linger on a post feeds this machine. And so, the systems we interact with daily are built not to nurture us, but to capture us. They are designed to hold us in place, like a fly caught in a web, unable to break free, even as we struggle against the threads. At first, it feels harmless. You open your phone to check a message or glance at a photo, but before you know it, minutes turn into hours. You come up for air, feeling strangely hollow, wondering where the time went. This isn't an accident. It's a feature, not a flaw. Algorithms are programmed to keep you engaged by constantly delivering tiny bursts of stimulation, alike a notification, a shocking headline. These moments light up your brain like fireworks, giving you a fleeting sense of excitement. But like fireworks, they burn out quickly, leaving only darkness and the craving for more. Always hungry, never nourished. Imagine sitting at a table covered with food, endless plates of sugary treats, salty snacks, and greasy bites. You keep eating, but no matter how much you consume, you never feel satisfied. Your body is full, but it is starving at the same time. This is what our relationship with digital information has become. We are constantly consuming, but rarely digesting. Each post, each video, each headline is like a handful of empty calories. We scroll, we snack, we swallow, but we never pause long enough to truly taste what we've taken in. And just like a body deprived of real nourishment begins to weaken, so does the mind. We lose the ability to think deeply, to reflect, to sit with a single idea long enough to understand it fully. Our thoughts become scattered, like leaves blown in the wind, always moving but never settling. This is why, despite being surrounded by more information than any generation before us, many of us feel increasingly confused, anxious, and disconnected. It's not a lack of access to knowledge that hurts us. It's the lack of space to absorb and integrate it. The currency of emotion. The machine knows something about us that we often forget. We are emotional beings before we are rational ones. And so, the systems built to keep us hooked don't just give us random content. They target our feelings. They amplify anger, because anger spreads. They highlight fear, because fear makes us click. They feed us outrage, shock, and envy, because those emotions are contagious, and contagious emotions keep us coming back for more. Over time, this constant stimulation begins to shape our inner world. We start to live in a state of perpetual reaction, jumping from one emotional high to the next, rarely pausing to question why. It's like being caught in a storm, tossed from wave to wave, never finding the calm water beneath. When emotion rules, wisdom falters. We lose our capacity for discernment, for seeing clearly. And when we can no longer see clearly, we are easy to manipulate, not just by the algorithms, but by anyone who knows how to play on our fears and desires. The illusion of connection. Perhaps the cruelest trick of all is the illusion that we are more connected than ever. We have hundreds, even thousands of friends and followers. We send messages across the globe in an instant. But ask yourself this: how many of these connections feel real? How many are built on genuine presence, deep listening, and shared understanding? Often, what we call connection is little more than digital noise. We trade depth for speed, intimacy for visibility. We are constantly surrounded by others online, yet many of us have never felt more isolated. True connection cannot be measured in likes or comments. It happens in the quiet moments: a heartfelt conversation, a shared silence, a touch that says, "I see you." These are the things technology cannot replicate, no matter how advanced it becomes. Taking back our minds. The good news is, this story doesn't have to end in despair. Technology is not inherently evil. It is a tool, and like any tool, its impact depends on how we use it. We can begin to take back our minds by creating intentional spaces for stillness. This might mean setting aside time each day to step away from the screens, to walk in nature, to breathe, to simply be without the constant pull of notifications. It might mean choosing to consume less, but with more care. Reading one thoughtful article instead of 100 headlines. Having one deep conversation instead of dozens of shallow interactions. Each small act of awareness is a form of rebellion against the machine. It's a way of saying, my attention is mine. My mind is not for sale. A quiet revolution. I've learned that true intelligence isn't about how much we know, It's about how deeply we understand, how wisely we apply what we've learned. And that kind of intelligence cannot thrive in a state of constant distraction. So tonight, before you close your eyes, consider this. Your mind is a sacred space. Every thought you allow in shapes the reality you experience. Every moment of attention you give is an offering. When we begin to treat our minds with reverence, we remember something vital. Technology may have the power to influence us, but we hold the power to choose. We can choose silence over noise, presence over distraction, nourishment over empty consumption. And in making those choices, one by one, we slowly reclaim not just our intelligence, but our humanity. Because at the heart of it, this is not a battle between us and technology. It's a journey back to ourselves, to the still, wise presence that no algorithm can touch. 4. A society that worships fame over wisdom. There was a time when wisdom sat at the center of our communities. People would gather around elders, teachers, philosophers, not because they were perfect, but because they carried the light of experience, a steady voice, to guide us through life's uncertainty. Their words didn't come in rapid bursts or catchy slogans. They came slowly, like the steady rhythm of a drum, reminding us of who we were and what truly mattered. But look around today, and you'll see a very different picture. We live in a world where noise is rewarded and depth is forgotten. The loudest voices are amplified, while the quiet ones, the thoughtful ones, are drowned out by a sea of spectacle. It's not that wisdom has vanished entirely, it's that our attention has been hijacked, pulled toward whatever is most shocking, most dramatic, most marketable. The rise of the spotlight fame has become a currency of its own. It doesn't matter what you stand for, what truths you hold, or even what value you bring. What matters is visibility. We celebrate people not for the integrity of their ideas, but for their ability to capture attention. Scroll through any social platform, and you'll see this in action. The influencer, with millions of followers, is treated like a prophet, their words dissected, repeated, idoliced. Meanwhile, the teacher who spends decades nurturing young minds, or the philosopher who wrestles with questions of meaning and morality, fades quietly into the background. It's as if the stage of society has been redesigned. The spotlight no longer seeks those with deep insight, it hunts for those who can perform, who can keep us watching, even if what they offer is empty. And the more outrageous the act, the brighter the spotlight shines. The seduction of the spectacle. This shift didn't happen overnight. It crept in slowly, disguised as entertainment. At first, we laughed. We clicked like. We shared a funny video or a clever meme. It felt harmless, even fun. But over time, the algorithms learned something about us. They discovered that the more sensational the content, the longer we stayed. And so, the platforms began to feed us more and more of it. Like a crowd at a carnival, we were drawn toward the brightest lights, the loudest music, the wildest acts. We didn't notice when the carnival stopped being a place we visited for fun and became the place where we lived. The problem is that spectacle leaves us hungry. It grabs our attention but doesn't nourish our souls. It's like eating spoonful after spoonful of sugar, sweet at first, but ultimately leaving us weak and craving more. When truth loses its value, the danger of this obsession with fame is not just that it distracts us. It changes what we value as a society. When the loudest voice wins, truth becomes optional. When popularity becomes the measure of worth, integrity fades into the background. We start to mistake virality for importance. We assume that if something is everywhere, it must be true. And in doing so, we become easy to manipulate, not because we are foolish, but because we have been conditioned to equate visibility with value. This is how lies spread faster than facts, how outrage eclipses understanding, How entire communities can be swayed by a single charismatic figure, even when their message is hollow or harmful. It's not just about who is speaking, it's about the system that decides whose voice is amplified and whose is silenced. The forgotten guides. I often think about the quiet ones, the wise ones who still walk among us, the teachers who devote their lives to shaping young hearts and minds, the philosophers and thinkers who wrestle with difficult truths in solitude, the healers, the storytellers, the ordinary people who live with compassion and integrity. Even when no one is watching, these people rarely go viral. They don't chase likes or followers. Their impact is quieter, slower, like seeds planted in the earth. You don't see the growth right away, but over time, their influence shapes the entire landscape of our lives. And yet, in a culture obsessed with instant results, these seeds are overlooked. We forget to honor the slow work of wisdom because we are too busy chasing the quick rush of entertainment. The cost of losing our way. When a society turns its back on wisdom, it begins to lose its foundation. We see this everywhere now in the anger that floods our conversations, in the polarization that divides families and nations, in the shallow debates that leave us more confused than before. Without wisdom to guide us, we are like a ship without a compass, drifting wherever the current of public opinion takes us. One day, we celebrate a hero. The next, we tear them down. We lurch from trend to trend, never pausing to ask, where are we actually going? This is not just a cultural problem. It's a spiritual one. When we worship fame over truth, we disconnect from something essential, the quiet knowing inside us, the part of us that recognizes what is real and lasting. In that disconnect, we lose not only trust in others but trust in ourselves, a return to what matters. The good news is that even in a world of spectacle, we can choose differently. We can choose to turn our attention toward what nourishes rather than what merely entertains. It begins in small ways, listening more than we speak, seeking out voices that challenge us to think deeply rather than react quickly, creating spaces in our own lives for reflection, silence, and truth. We don't have to wait for the entire system to change before we begin. Every time we choose depth over noise, we plant a seed for a different kind of culture. A culture where wisdom has value again. A culture where those who teach, heal, and guide are lifted up, not pushed aside. Lighting the quiet flame, I believe there is still hope because wisdom has never truly disappeared. It may be hidden, and often overlooked, but it is still here in the conversations we have with our children, in the books that make us pause and reflect, in the acts of kindness that ripple through our communities. Fame burns bright, like a firework lighting up the night sky, but it fades quickly, leaving only smoke. Wisdom, on the other hand, is like a candle flame. It may not dazzle or explode, but it endures. It lights the way, gently and consistently, through even the darkest nights. Our task, then, is not to compete with the fireworks. It is to keep tending the candle, to hold it steady in our hands and share its light with others, one person at a time. Because while fame may rule the moment, it is wisdom that shapes the ages. And when enough of us remember this, the quiet flame of truth can outshine even the loudest noise. 5. Choosing the easy path. There is a part of our human nature that longs for simplicity, not just in the way we live, but in the way we think and understand the world. We crave the comfort of a clear answer, the relief of a story that ties everything together neatly. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of what makes us human. But in today's world, this longing for simplicity has been turned against us. It has been shaped, amplified, and exploited by systems that know exactly how our brains work. And as a result, we are quietly being led down the easiest path, not because it is right, but because it is profitable and convenient for those who benefit from our complacency. The brain's love for the shortcut. Our minds are wired for survival. Thousands of years ago, quick decisions meant life or death. When faced with danger, our ancestors didn't have the luxury of pausing to analyze every detail. They had to react instantly. Fight, flee, or freeze. This instinct is still inside us. Even though our modern threats are no longer wild animals or rival tribes, today, that same instinct makes us gravitate towards simple, fast answers. A headline that confirms our beliefs feels satisfying. A meme that explains a complex issue in a single sentence feels like truth. We cling to these shortcuts because they save us from the discomfort of uncertainty. But real truth is rarely simple. It asks us to sit with ambiguity, to hold competing ideas in our minds without rushing to resolve them. And that takes effort, mental, emotional, even spiritual effort. It is far easier to choose the path of least resistance, to nod along with whatever explanation makes us feel safe and certain. The marketplace of easy answers. In the modern world, this tendency has become a commodity. Corporations, media outlets, and social platforms have learned how to package simplicity and sell it back to us. They give us bite-sized content designed to capture attention without demanding reflection. The more shocking or emotionally charged the message, the faster it spreads, not because it is true, but because it is easy to understand. It's like fast food for the mind, quick, tasty, and deeply unsatisfying in the long run. Meanwhile, genuine wisdom, the kind that requires patience and effort, struggles to compete. A nuanced article is ignored, while a sensational headline goes viral. A thoughtful conversation is drowned out by a shouting match. The slow, steady work of understanding is pushed aside for the instant gratification of reaction. And slowly, almost without realizing it, we become addicted to ease. We stop questioning. We stop digging deeper. We begin to expect the world to come to us in neat, simple packages, forgetting that life has always been complex and messy, avoiding the complex truth. The danger of this addiction is that it trains us to avoid anything that feels difficult. If a problem seems too complicated, we turn away. If a truth challenges our worldview, we reject it. If a solution requires patience and sacrifice, we dismiss it as unrealistic. This avoidance is understandable. Complexity can be uncomfortable. It forces us to confront the limits of our understanding. It reminds us that we don't have as much control as we like to believe. But avoiding complexity doesn't make it disappear. It only makes us more vulnerable to manipulation. Those who offer the simplest answers often have the most to gain from our willingness to accept them blindly. The illusion of certainty. There is a strange kind of comfort in a simple answer. It gives us the illusion of certainty, the feeling that we understand the world and our place in it. But this comfort comes at a cost. When we cling to simplicity, we close ourselves off to growth. We stop asking questions. We stop listening to perspectives that challenge us. We build walls around our minds, mistaking them for fortresses of truth, when in reality they are cages of limitation. And over time, those cages grow tighter. We begin to see anyone who disagrees with us as a threat. We divide ourselves into tribes, each with its own set of easy answers, shouting across a widening chasm of misunderstanding. The courage to stay with complexity. It takes courage to resist this pattern, to sit in the space of not knowing, to admit that some questions don't have simple answers, and that's okay. This kind of courage is quiet and rare. It doesn't shout or demand attention. It looks like listening deeply, even when what you hear is uncomfortable. It looks like saying, "I don't know, but I'm willing to learn." When we practice this courage, something shifts inside us. We begin to see complexity, not as a threat, but as a teacher. We realize that the world's messiness mirrors our own inner landscape, the parts of ourselves we'd rather avoid. And by facing it, we grow. Breaking free from the easy path. I've learned through my own journey that the easy path is rarely the path of truth. It may feel smooth at first, like a downhill slide, but eventually, it leads to stagnation. We stop evolving. We stop becoming who we are meant to be. The harder path, the one that asks us to think, to feel, to wrestle with uncertainty, is the path of transformation. It doesn't promise comfort, but it does offer depth. And depth is what we are starving for in this age of instant gratification. Every time we choose to pause instead of react, to question instead of assume, we take a step away from the easy path. Every time we seek understanding rather than quick judgment, we reclaim a piece of our humanity. A quiet invitation. As you move through your day, notice the moments when you are tempted by simplicity. Notice the headlines that make you nod without thinking, the stories that confirm what you already believe. And in those moments, take a breath. Ask yourself, what else might be true here? It doesn't mean rejecting simplicity altogether. Some truths are beautifully simple, but it does mean refusing to let simplicity be your only guide. Life is complex. People are complex. And within that complexity lies the beauty of being fully alive. The easy path may promise certainty, but it leads us away from the richness of our own existence. The harder path, the one that requires patience and courage, leads us home back to a place where truth is not a headline, but a living, breathing experience. And in the end, that journey is worth every step. 6. Power and manipulation. There's a difficult truth many of us would rather not face. The decline of collective intelligence is not an accident. It hasn't happened simply because technology moved too fast, or because people became careless, or because culture just changed. No, this decline serves a purpose. It benefits certain forces, both visible and hidden, that thrive when the population is distracted, divided, and exhausted. When people are overwhelmed, when they are too busy arguing over trivial matters or chasing endless entertainment, they stop noticing the subtle strings being pulled behind the curtain. And those who hold power know this well. The ancient strategy that never died history has a way of repeating itself, even when the costumes and stage sets change. In ancient Rome, emperors used a strategy known as bread and circuses. The idea was simple: keep the masses fed and entertained, and they will remain docile, even as their freedoms quietly erode. As long as people had cheap food and thrilling spectacles to distract them, they wouldn't rise up against corruption or question the system. Today, the arenas have changed. We no longer gather in coliseums to watch gladiators fight, but we gather in digital spaces, endless feeds of drama, gossip, and outrage. The bread comes in the form of consumer comforts and instant gratification. The circus arrives through screens that keep us hooked, laughing, crying, arguing anything but thinking deeply, or acting collectively. It is a strategy as old as civilization itself, dressed up in modern clothing, and it works. Why division serves control. A society united is difficult to control. When people come together, they can hold those in power accountable. They can organize, resist, demand change. But when people are divided, they are easy to manipulate. This is why so much of modern life seems engineered to create conflict and fragmentation. We are encouraged to see one another as enemies rather than fellow human beings. Every issue becomes a battle. Every difference, a reason to fight. Our energy gets consumed in endless debates, name-calling, and defending our side, while the deeper problems, the ones affecting us all, go unaddressed. It's like watching a puppet show while never noticing the hands controlling the strings. We think we are fighting freely, but in reality, our battles are choreographed, and the more we fight each other, the less we notice who is quietly benefiting from our chaos. The role of distraction. Distraction is one of the most powerful tools of control. When the mind is constantly bombarded with noise, it becomes too tired to see clearly. The endless stream of news, advertisements, scandals, and trends keeps us locked in a state of reaction. We're always responding to notifications, to headlines, to someone else's opinion, but rarely creating anything truly our own. In this state, there's no room for reflection, no space for discernment. And without reflection, it becomes almost impossible to challenge the narratives we're being fed. It's like living in a house where every room has a television blaring. You can't hear your own thoughts over the noise. Eventually, you forget what silence even feels like. And when silence is lost, clarity is lost too. Comfort as a form of control. Another subtle form of manipulation comes through comfort. When life feels comfortable, when our basic needs are met and our desires are instantly gratified, we are less likely to question the structures around us. Think about it if you are busy enjoying the next big show, or waiting for the next package to arrive at your door, or chasing the next fleeting thrill. You may not notice the slow erosion of freedoms happening in the background. You may not realize how deeply your choices are being shaped, not by your own desires, but by systems designed to keep you consuming and compliant. This isn't to say that comfort is wrong or pleasure is bad. It's to point out how easily they can become chains disguised as gifts. When comfort becomes a tool of control, it stops serving you and begins to serve those who profit from your distraction. The illusion of freedom. One of the most striking aspects of modern manipulation is that it often operates under the appearance of freedom. We are told we have endless choices, thousands of channels to watch, products to buy, opinions to express. But look closely, and you'll see that these choices often lead back to the same place. True freedom is not about having infinite options. It is about having awareness, the ability to see clearly, to choose consciously, rather than react automatically. Without awareness, freedom is just another performance, another illusion in the grand circus. This is why the decline of collective intelligence is so convenient for those in power. The less we think critically, the more we confuse choice with liberation. We mistake the noise of activity for the substance of change, breaking the spell. So, how do we begin to resist this manipulation? It starts with reclaiming our attention. When you take back control of your mind, even in small, quiet ways, you begin to loosen the grip of those who profit from your distraction. Pause before reacting to the next headline. Turn off the screen for an hour and sit in silence. Talk with someone face to face about something that matters. These simple acts are powerful because they interrupt the cycle of automatic response. They remind you that beneath the noise, there is a deeper rhythm, one that cannot be manipulated or bought. Collectively, when enough people step out of the circus, the entire system begins to shift. The bread and circuses lose their hold when the audience walks away. A quiet revolution of awareness. The forces that seek to divide and distract us may seem immense, but they are not invincible. Their power depends entirely on our participation. The moment we stop playing by their rules, their influence begins to crumble. This doesn't require dramatic rebellion. It requires presence. It requires seeing through the illusions and remembering our shared humanity. When we come together not as tribes locked in conflict, but as people united by a common desire for truth, we become far more difficult to control. Our intelligence, once scattered and dulled, begins to sharpen again. We start to recognize the hands pulling the strings, and we choose, consciously, to cut those strings. Closing reflection. The modern world is full of dazzling lights and endless distractions, but beneath it all, the pattern is ancient. The same strategy used by emperors thousands of years ago is still at work today, only now. The arena fits in the palm of your hand. You cannot control the entire system, but you can control your own awareness. And awareness is the first step toward freedom. Each time you pause, reflect, and choose presence over distraction, you are breaking the spell. Each time you connect with another person authentically, you are building a foundation of true power, the kind that cannot be manipulated or bought. In the end, real freedom doesn't come from what we are given. It comes from what we remember, that beyond the noise and the circus, we are capable of seeing clearly, thinking deeply, and living fully together. 7. The culture of shallow performance. There was a time when storytelling was sacred, when words were woven carefully, like threads in a tapestry, meant to carry meaning and connect hearts. In those days, truth was not entertainment. It was guidance, a way for people to make sense of their lives, to find their place in the world, and to grow in wisdom. But today, in our modern age, that sacred art has been replaced by a never-ending show. We don't gather around fires to share stories that heal and teach. We gather around screens, watching a stage that never goes dark, where everyone is performing and no one is truly seen. The rise of the endless stage. Modern media has turned life into a spectacle. News, politics, personal lives, nothing is too intimate or too profound to escape the spotlight. Everything becomes content. Every moment becomes a performance. The truth doesn't seem to matter anymore. What matters is how a story makes us feel, whether it shocks us, excites us, or stirs us to react without thinking. A headline doesn't need to be accurate. It just needs to grab your attention long enough for you to click, comment, or share. It's a game of numbers. The more people watching, the more power and money flow to those on the stage. And so, the stage grows larger, the lights grow brighter, and the performances grow louder, while the truth fades quietly into the background. Noise over depth. In this world of constant performance, depth is no longer rewarded. Complex, nuanced ideas move too slowly to compete. They require time, reflection, and careful listening. Things our attention-driven culture no longer values. Instead, we are given quick bites of stimulation, shocking sound bites, dramatic images, exaggerated emotions. It's like living on a diet of sugar and caffeine, intense in the moment, but ultimately leaving us shaky and hollow. The deeper layers of reality, the parts of life that can't be captured in a headline or a viral video, are quietly disappearing from our collective awareness. We are left with surface impressions, fragmented glimpses, and the constant hum of noise. It's no wonder so many of us feel anxious, lost, and disconnected. Our souls are starving for meaning, while we are endlessly fed distraction. The cost of being seen, but not known. One of the strangest paradoxes of our time is that we have never been more visible, yet never felt more invisible. People share every detail of their lives online, carefully curated and filtered, yet still feel profoundly unseen. Why? Because being looked at is not the same as being known. Visibility is not intimacy, and performance is not connection. When we turn our lives into a show, we begin to lose touch with our inner selves. We start to measure our worth by external applause, likes, followers, views. The quiet voice within the part of us that longs for authenticity and truth gets drowned out by the roar of the crowd. And over time, this erodes our sense of self. We forget who we are when no one is watching. The machine behind the curtain, behind this culture of performance, is a powerful system. It's not just individuals performing for fun. There are entire industries built on keeping the show going. Industries that profit from our attention, our reactions, and our emotional highs and lows. The more outrage, the more conflict, the more extreme the spectacle, the better. Because the better the show, the more money flows in. It doesn't matter if the performance tears communities apart or spreads lies that harm millions. As long as the audience keeps watching, the machine keeps running. It's a modern-day Colosseum, and we are both the spectators and the entertainment. The gladiators fight with words instead of swords. But the outcome is the same distraction for the masses, power for the few, the hunger for something real. And yet, beneath all this noise, there is a quiet hunger. Most people don't truly want endless drama and spectacle. They want something real. They want to feel connected, understood, and part of something meaningful. That hunger shows up in small ways. A deep conversation that lingers in your heart. A moment of stillness in nature. A book or piece of music that moves you to tears. These are the experiences that remind us there is more to life than performance. But because the spectacle is so constant and loud, these moments are easy to miss. We forget that they exist. We begin to believe the show is all there is. Finding depth in a shallow world. The good news is that we don't have to live on the surface. We can choose to step out of the performance, even if just for a while, and reconnect with the deeper currents of life. This begins in simple ways. Pausing before you react, listening without planning your response, allowing yourself to feel fully blink without needing to broadcast those feelings to the world. It also means seeking out spaces and people who value depth, places where the focus is on understanding rather than judgment, on presence rather than performance. These spaces may be rare, but they are powerful. They remind us of what it feels like to be truly human, not as an actor on a stage, but as a soul among other souls. A quiet resistance. Choosing depth in a culture of spectacle is an act of quiet resistance. It won't earn you applause or go viral, but it will nourish you in ways that performance never can. When you refuse to be part of the endless show, you create a small pocket of sanity in a chaotic world. You become like a calm lake amidst crashing waves, a place where others can come to rest, reflect, and remember what matters. And slowly, as more people step off the stage, the entire culture begins to shift. The noise grows quieter, the lights dim, and in that softening, truth has a chance to return. Closing reflection. Modern media has turned life into a never-ending performance. But you do not have to play along. You can choose to live in a way that honors what is real. Even when the world around you celebrates the fake, this isn't about rejecting technology or turning away from the world completely. It's about reclaiming your attention, your values, and your sense of self. Because when we stop performing, we begin to remember who we are. And when enough of us remember, the stage itself begins to crumble not through force or violence, but through the quiet, undeniable power of authenticity. In the end, the most radical thing you can do in a shallow world is to live deeply, to speak truthfully, to see and be seen without the mask of performance, and to offer that depth as a gift, reminding others that beyond the noise, there is still silence, still truth, still life waiting to be lived. 8. Education has lost its mission of enlightenment. There was once a time when education was a sacred promise. It wasn't just about learning facts or preparing for a career. It was about awakening the mind, igniting curiosity, and nurturing the soul. True education was meant to guide us toward understanding ourselves and the world around us, to help us ask better questions, not simply memorize answers. It was meant to produce not only workers, but thinkers, not just people who could fit into the world as it is, but people with the courage to imagine the world as it could be. But somewhere along the way, that promise was broken. Today, our education systems no longer serve as pathways to enlightenment. They have become factories, efficient, mechanical, focused on output rather than transformation. The rise of memorization over understanding. Walk into a modern classroom, and you'll often find students buried under tests, assignments, and rigid curriculums. The focus is no longer on why something matters, but on whether it can be recited perfectly on an exam. Students are trained to remember, not to understand. This shift may seem subtle, but its consequences are profound. When the mind is trained only to repeat information, it never learns to think for itself. It becomes like a machine, producing predictable outputs, but incapable of original thought. I've seen it in the eyes of young people, a quiet weariness, a subtle dimming of the light that should be there. These are bright, capable souls who have been taught to value grades over growth, conformity over creativity. And slowly, they begin to forget the joy of discovery, the thrill of asking a question that doesn't have an easy answer, the tyranny of the test. In this system, numbers reign supreme. Scores, rankings, and standardized tests have become the ultimate measure of a person's worth. It doesn't matter if a student is compassionate, imaginative, or wise beyond their years. If their numbers don't meet the standard, they are labeled as less than. This obsession with measurement creates a dangerous illusion that intelligence can be captured on paper, that a person's potential can be reduced to a single grade. But real learning is messy. It cannot be fully quantified. It happens in moments of struggle, in failed experiments, in long conversations that meander and circle back. And because these things cannot be measured easily, they are often ignored altogether. As a result, students grow up internalizing a painful message: my value depends on how I perform. And this belief follows them into adulthood, shaping the way they work, the way they relate to others, even the way they see themselves. The death of curiosity. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of all is the slow death of curiosity. Children are naturally curious. Watch a small child, explore the world, and you'll see a pure, unfiltered desire to learn. They ask questions not because they need to pass a test, but because life itself is a mystery they long to understand. But as they move through the education system, that curiosity is gradually replaced by compliance. Instead of being rewarded for questioning, they are rewarded for giving the right answer. Instead of exploring freely, they are told to stay within the lines. By the time they reach adulthood, many have forgotten how to wonder. They become passive recipients of information, waiting for someone else to tell them what to think. And this passivity makes them easy to lead by corporations, governments, influencers, anyone who speaks with confidence. The collective cost. This is not just an individual issue. When an entire generation grows up without the ability to think critically, society itself suffers. Without independent thinkers, innovation slows. Without critical questioning, corruption thrives. Without creative problem solvers, we recycle the same broken systems over and over again. We see this everywhere today. People arguing passionately, yet rarely listening. Decisions being made based on emotion rather than reason. Communities fractured because no one knows how to sit with complexity or ambiguity. When education fails, democracy weakens. When education fails, power concentrates in the hands of the few. And when education fails, we all pay the price. What real education could be? It doesn't have to be this way. Education can still fulfill its original mission, but it requires a shift in how we see learning itself. True education doesn't just fill the mind with facts, it awakens the mind to its own potential. It doesn't teach what to think, it teaches how to think. Imagine a classroom where students are encouraged to question authority, to explore ideas that challenge them, to express their unique perspectives without fear of failure. Imagine a world where mistakes are seen not as proof of inadequacy, but as essential steps in the journey of growth. This is what learning was always meant to be: a space where souls expand, not shrink. The role of teachers. Teachers are at the heart of this transformation. Many of them entered the profession with a deep love of learning and a desire to inspire, but too often, they are trapped in a system that treats them like mere delivery mechanisms for standardized content. When teachers are empowered to teach creatively, everything changes. A single passionate teacher can ignite a spark that burns for a lifetime, I still remember a teacher from my own youth who did this for me. They didn't just teach me facts. They taught me to see the world differently. That lesson was worth more than any grade I ever received. A call to remember. The first step to restoring education's true purpose is simply to remember that learning is about transformation, not just transmission. To remember that a child's worth cannot be measured in numbers. To remember that creativity, compassion, and critical thinking are as vital as any technical skill. This remembering doesn't require sweeping reforms or massive budgets. It begins in small, human ways. A parent encouraging curiosity instead of demanding perfection. A teacher daring to step outside the curriculum for one meaningful conversation. A community valuing learning for its own sake rather than for economic gain. Closing reflection. When we think of education, it's easy to focus on policies, tests, and systems, but at its core, education is a relationship between teacher and student, between generations, between the past and the future. If we can return to this understanding, something beautiful can happen. We can raise a generation of thinkers, creators, and dreamers who are not easily swayed by the noise of the world. We can build a society that values depth over surface, wisdom over spectacle, truth over convenience. Because in the end, education is not just about preparing people to make a living. It's about preparing them to make a life one filled with meaning, purpose, and the courage to ask the questions that truly matter. 9. Division and the loss of dialogue. There's a quiet tragedy unfolding in our world today. One that rarely makes headlines, but shapes everything we see and feel. It's the slow unraveling of our ability to truly speak to one another. Not just to talk, but to listen, to understand, to bridge the invisible spaces between us. Once, conversation was a sacred act. People gathered around tables, fires, or shared spaces to exchange stories, ideas, and dreams. Even when disagreements arose, there was still a thread of connection, a willingness to see the other person not as an enemy, but as a fellow traveler on this strange and beautiful journey of life. But now, more and more, our conversations feel like battlefields. Instead of connection, there is confrontation. Instead of listening, there is shouting. And instead of searching for truth, there is only the frantic defense of the self. The rise of tribal thinking. When society fractures into groups, political parties, social movements, belief systems, identities, something subtle but dangerous happens. These groups become tribes, and our loyalty to them starts to override our loyalty to truth. We begin to see the world through the lens of us versus them. Every conversation becomes a test. Are you on my side, or are you against me? And once that question is asked, genuine dialogue becomes almost impossible. This tribal mindset is not new. It's ancient, woven into our survival instincts. For our ancestors, belonging to a tribe meant safety, protection, and survival. But in today's interconnected world, this instinct often turns toxic. It keeps us locked in cycles of mistrust and conflict. Even when there is far more that unites us than divides us, conversations turned into battles. You've probably felt this in your own life. Perhaps you've tried to discuss an important issue with a friend or family member, only to watch the conversation spiral into anger. Voices rise, defenses go up, and suddenly it's no longer about the topic at hand. It's about winning. When emotions take over, the actual content of the discussion fades into the background. We stop hearing each other's words and start reacting to what we think they mean. We interrupt, we accuse, we label, and somewhere in the chaos, the possibility of understanding disappears. It's heartbreaking because underneath the conflict, there is often a shared desire to be seen, to be heard, to be respected. But when fear and ego take center stage, That desire gets lost in the noise. Labels replace truth. One of the clearest signs of this breakdown is our increasing reliance on labels. Instead of engaging with the complexity of a person's ideas or experiences, we reduce them to a single word or identity. Conservative, liberal, believer, non-believer, right, wrong. Once a label is applied, it becomes a shortcut, a way to avoid the hard work of truly listening. The problem with labels is that they flatten people. They erase nuance, context, and individuality. They turn living, breathing human beings into symbols of an ideology. And when we see each other only as symbols, empathy dies. We stop asking questions. We stop being curious. We stop remembering that behind every opinion is a human story, shaped by pain, hope, and longing. The replacement of truth with slogans. As dialogue disappears, something else takes its place. Slogans. Slogans are easy. They are short, punchy, emotionally charged. They rally people quickly, but they rarely contain the depth or complexity of real truth. When slogans dominate our conversations, we no longer discuss ideas. We trade sound bites. We repeat phrases we've heard online or on the news without stopping to ask, do I actually believe this? Do I even understand it? The tragedy here is not just that we lose truth, but that we lose our capacity to seek truth together. What could have been a shared journey of discovery turns into a shouting match, with each side clinging to their slogans like shields. The emotional toll of division. This constant state of conflict takes a heavy toll on the human heart. Living in a divided world is exhausting. It breeds anxiety, mistrust, and a deep sense of isolation. When every conversation feels like a fight, we begin to withdraw. We stop reaching out. We stop sharing our real thoughts and feelings because we fear they will be misunderstood or attacked. And so, we retreat into echo chambers, places where everyone agrees with us, where our beliefs are constantly reinforced. These spaces feel safe at first, but over time, they make us even more disconnected from the world outside. They turn us inward, until our view of reality becomes narrow and distorted. Remembering the art of dialogue. Yet even in this darkness, there is hope, because dialogue is not truly gone. It is simply buried beneath layers of noise and fear. To reclaim it, we must return to something very simple, yet profoundly challenging: listening. Real listening is not passive. It's an act of courage. It requires us to set aside our assumptions and defenses, even for a moment, and to meet another person as they are, not as a label, not as an enemy, but as a fellow human being. This doesn't mean we must agree with everyone. It doesn't mean we must abandon our convictions. It means we are willing to engage with curiosity rather than judgment. The power of questions. One of the most healing things we can do in a divided world is to ask better questions. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," try asking, "Can you tell me more about why you see it that way?" Instead of assuming, "They'll never understand me," try wondering, what experiences shape their perspective? Questions open doors that arguments slam shut. They invite dialogue rather than conflict. And in that invitation, something beautiful can happen. Two people can find common ground, even if they don't agree on everything. A gentle way forward. Rebuilding our capacity for dialogue will not happen overnight. It begins in small, quiet moments. A conversation where we choose patience over reaction, understanding over victory. We cannot control the divisions of the entire world, but we can choose how we show up in our own relationships. Each time we listen deeply, we plant a seed. Each time we refuse to reduce someone to a label, we water that seed. And over time, these small acts can grow into a culture of connection. Closing reflection. The world is noisy and divided, but beneath the shouting, there is still a longing for harmony. Most of us don't truly want to fight. We want to be heard, to be seen, to belong. Dialogue is how we find our way back to one another. It is not about winning or losing, it is about remembering that beyond our beliefs and differences, we share the same fragile, beautiful humanity. When we speak and listen from that place, truth no longer needs slogans. It becomes something we create together, a living, breathing force that heals rather than divides. And in that healing, we remember who we really are. 10. The illusion of connection. In our modern world, we are more connected than ever, or at least, that's what we've been led to believe. With a single tap, we can send words, images, even fragments of our lives across the globe. In an instant, we can watch someone's face appear on a screen thousands of miles away, hear their voice, read their thoughts. And yet, despite all this, there's a deep and growing emptiness beneath the surface. It's a strange paradox. We are surrounded by people online, yet many of us have never felt more alone. The promise that fell short. When social media first appeared, it felt like a miracle. It offered us the possibility of staying in touch with old friends, meeting new ones, sharing our stories, and building communities that transcended physical boundaries. And for a while, it worked. There were genuine moments of connection, long-lost friends reuniting, families staying close across oceans, movements for justice and compassion, finding their voices. But slowly, something shifted. The platforms that promised to bring us closer began to subtly reshape our relationships, bit by bit. Without even noticing, we traded depth for speed, intimacy for visibility, presence for performance. What began as a tool for connection has, in many ways, become a stage where we perform our lives for one another. And while the audience may applaud, true closeness fades quietly into the background. Loneliness in the midst of a crowd. Have you ever been in a room full of people, everyone chatting, laughing, and yet felt completely alone? Social media can feel like that, a room with millions of voices, but none truly reaching you. We scroll through endless feeds, liking photos, leaving comments, sharing updates. On the surface, it looks like interaction, but beneath it, there's a profound absence of presence. We are seeing each other's curated images, not our real selves. We are responding to avatars, not to living, breathing humans. The more time we spend online, the more this gap widens. We begin to mistake visibility for closeness. We believe that because someone has seen our post, they have seen us. But deep down, we know the truth. We are still unseen, still untouched. Surface-level relationships. Many of our modern relationships now exist almost entirely in the digital realm. We share updates and emojis instead of stories told face-to-face. We send quick messages instead of sitting together in silence. And while these small exchanges can be comforting in the moment, they rarely satisfy the deeper longing of the heart. True connexion requiert présence. It requires the kind of attention that can only be given when two people are fully here with each other, without distraction. It's in the pauses, the eye contact, the unspoken gestures, the subtle things that no technology can replicate. When our relationships lack this presence, they become fragile, easily broken by misunderstandings, easily replaced by the next notification, easily forgotten when the screen goes dark. The commodification of connection. One of the most painful truths about modern social platforms is that our relationships have become commodities. Our interactions are tracked, measured, and sold to advertisers. The more we engage, the more profit flows to the companies that host our connections. This means the platforms have no real incentive to nurture depth. What they need is activity, constant clicks, likes, shares. And so, the systems are designed to keep us hooked, not fulfilled. They reward shallow interactions because shallow interactions are quick and frequent. It's like being served a constant stream of snacks instead of a nourishing meal. We keep eating, but we never feel full. And somewhere inside, we begin to wonder why we're still hungry. The growing epidemic of loneliness studies now show that despite being more digitally connected than any generation before us, rates of loneliness and isolation are skyrocketing. People report feeling unseen, unsupported, and misunderstood even when they have hundreds or thousands of online friends. This loneliness isn't just emotional. It has profound physical effects. It wears down the body, weakens the immune system, and shortens life expectancy. It's as if our very cells know the difference between real human touch and the illusion of connection provided by a screen. We are wired for closeness. Our nervous systems calm when we sit with someone who truly listens. Our hearts heal when we are held not virtually, but physically, soulfully. No amount of likes or followers can replace that. Rediscovering true connection. The good news is that real connection has not disappeared. It is still here, waiting beneath the layers of noise and distraction. But finding it requires intention. It means slowing down and choosing quality over quantity. Instead of dozens of shallow interactions, seek out one or two relationships where you can be fully yourself. Turn off the phone during a conversation. Look someone in the eyes. Let silence have space to breathe. It also means learning to be present with yourself, because the more connected you are to your own heart, the more deeply you can connect with others. If you feel unseen, start by seeing yourself with kindness, with honesty, with compassion, practical acts of presence. Sometimes, small gestures create the biggest shifts. Call someone instead of texting them. Meet a friend for coffee without documenting it online. Write a letter by hand. Listen without interrupting or planning your reply. These simple acts remind us of what real connection feels like. Technology can still have a place in our lives. It can help us stay in touch, share ideas, and organize for good causes. But it should never replace the real, messy, beautiful work of showing up for one another in the flesh. A closing reflection. We thought social media would bring us closer, and in some ways, it has. But connection built on speed and performance is fragile. It can never take the place of the deep bonds formed through presence and care. The illusion of connection is seductive because it's easy. It asks so little of us, just a click, a swipe, a scroll. But true connection asks everything. It asks for time, vulnerability, patience, and love. As we move through this noisy digital age, we can choose differently. We can choose to step out of the performance and into authenticity. We can choose to see and be seen, not as images on a screen, but as whole, complex, miraculous beings. Because in the end, connection is not about how many people know your name. It's about how deeply a few people know your soul. And that kind of connection can only happen when we dare to put down our phones, open our hearts, and meet each other face to face, not just with our eyes, but with our presence, our attention, and our love. 11. The path to rebirth of wisdom. It is easy to look at the state of our world today and feel hopeless. Everywhere you turn, there is noise, distraction, division, and manipulation. The decline of collective intelligence can feel overwhelming, like a tide that cannot be turned. But here is a truth I have learned. Through my own struggles, this decline is not destiny. We are not powerless. We are not merely victims of systems built to exploit us. At any moment, we can choose to wake up, to take back our minds and our hearts. It doesn't require dramatic acts or grand revolutions. Often, it begins quietly, in the smallest of ways, a choice made in the privacy of your own soul. There are 3 simple steps on this path to rebirth. Though simple, they are far from easy. They require courage, patience, and a willingness to go against the grain of a culture built on speed and spectacle. But each step is a quiet act of rebellion, a refusal to let distraction and manipulation have the final word. Step 1: Awareness. The first step is always to see clearly. As long as we remain blind to the ways we are being manipulated, nothing can truly change. Awareness is like light breaking through darkness. Sudden, disorienting, but absolutely necessary. Begin by observing your own mind. Notice how often you are pulled into endless scrolling, arguments online, or the constant hunger for external validation. Notice how certain headlines make your heart race, how certain apps seem to consume your time without you even realizing it. This is not about judgment. It's about witnessing, simply seeing how your attention is being shaped and directed. When you begin to see the patterns, you also begin to see the invisible hands behind them. And in that moment, you take your first step toward freedom. Awareness also means seeing the larger forces at play, recognizing how power thrives on division, how algorithms profit from outrage, how entire industries are built on keeping you distracted and reactive. It's like pulling back a curtain to reveal the machinery behind the stage. Once you see it, you can no longer unsee it. And though this realization may be uncomfortable, it is profoundly empowering. Because when you see clearly, you can no longer be manipulated so easily. Step 2: Discipline. Awareness alone is not enough. Once you see the forces that seek to control you, you must choose differently, and this requires discipline. Discipline is not about harshness or self-punishment. It is about creating the conditions for your mind to thrive. It's about saying no to the shallow, easy options that numb you, and saying yes to the deeper, more challenging choices that nourish you. In practice, this might mean setting limits on your screen time. It might mean seeking out books instead of clickbait articles, or spending an hour in nature instead of an hour in online debates. It might mean learning to sit in silence, even when silence feels uncomfortable. This kind of discipline is an act of love for yourself. It is a way of telling your mind and spirit, you deserve more than scraps of stimulation. You deserve nourishment. And here's the beautiful paradox. The more disciplined you become, the freer you feel, because each moment of conscious choice breaks another link in the chain of unconscious reaction. Step 3: Dialogue. Once we have begun to reclaim our own minds, we must turn outward toward each other. True wisdom is never solitary. It grows through dialogue, through the exchange of ideas and perspectives. But dialogue today has been replaced by debate, by shouting matches where the goal is not to understand, but to win. To rediscover dialogue, we must return to the ancient practices of listening and questioning. The philosopher Socrates understood this well. He believed that the path to truth was not through lectures or arguments, but through questions, gentle, probing, open-ended questions that invite reflection rather than reaction. Imagine what our world would feel like if we approached each other this way. Instead of saying, "You're wrong," we might say, "Help me understand." Instead of rushing to defend our beliefs, we might sit in the discomfort of not knowing, allowing space for new insights to emerge. Dialogue requires humility. It asks us to release our need to be right and to open ourselves to the mystery of shared exploration. And in doing so, it creates bridges where once there were walls, a quiet revolution. Each of these steps, awareness, discipline, dialogue, may seem small on their own, but together, they form the foundation of a quiet revolution. Not a revolution fought with weapons or slogans, but with attention, presence, and courage. When you choose awareness over distraction, you weaken the power of those who profit from your confusion. When you practice discipline, you begin to withdraw your energy from the systems that exploit you. When you engage in true dialogue, you heal divisions and plant seeds of understanding in a fractured world. This revolution will not happen overnight. It will not trend on social media or make headlines, but slowly, quietly, it will grow. One person, one choice, one conversation at a time. The return of collective intelligence. Imagine a world where more and more people take these steps. A world where individuals no longer give their power away so easily. A world where communities are built on curiosity rather than conflict, on depth rather than distraction. Collective intelligence is not a distant dream. It is the natural state of a society where people are awake and connected not through screens, but through shared presence and purpose. When enough of us choose this path, the tide begins to turn. The noise grows keener. The manipulation loses its grip. And what remains is something ancient and timeless, a human family learning, growing, and creating together. Closing reflection. The decline we see around us can feel overwhelming. But remember, it does not define us. Every moment is an opportunity to choose differently, to take back what has been lost. Awareness, disciplina, dialogue. These are not just steps. They are acts of courage, acts of defiance, acts of love. You may feel small in the face of the world's chaos, but your choices ripple outward in ways you cannot imagine. Each moment of presence, each act of conscious listening, each refusal to be manipulated is a seed of wisdom planted in the collective field. And one day, when enough seeds have been planted, we will wake to find that the garden of human intelligence has been reborn not through force or fear, but through the quiet, steady power of awakened hearts and minds. 12. The forgetting of our true nature. There's a quiet ache that lives beneath the surface of modern life. It shows up in ways we often don't notice in the restless scrolling, the endless striving, the unspoken loneliness that lingers even when we are surrounded by people. This ache comes from something deeper than stress or exhaustion. It comes from forgetting who we really are. In the rush to keep up with the demands of a material world, we have slowly drifted away from ourselves. We have been swept up in a race for status, possessions, and recognition, mistaking these things for our identity. We have become so entangled in our roles, or labels, our online personas, that we have lost sight of the living presence beneath them. And when we forget that presence, we forget not only ourselves, but also one another. We begin to see each other as separate, as competitors, as strangers rather than as reflections of the same source, the same essence that animates all life. The masks we wear from the moment we are born. The world begins to hand us masks. You are this. It says, you belong to this family, this country, this belief system. You must play this role to be accepted, to be valued. Over time, we come to believe these masks are who we are. We identify so strongly with our achievements, our failures, our opinions, that we forget there is something far deeper beneath them, something unchanging and infinite. Think about how much energy we spend defending these identities. We argue, we fight, we divide ourselves into groups based on these surface-level differences. We judge others by the masks they wear, forgetting that beneath those masks are beings just like us, longing for love, safety, and belonging. The tragedy is not that we wear masks. Some roles are necessary for navigating life. The tragedy is that we forget they are masks at all. We take the performance to be reality. And in doing so, we lose touch with the quiet truth at the center of our being. The illusion of separation. When we forget our true nature, we fall into the greatest illusion of all separation. Separation tells us, I am me, and you are you. We are different. What affects you has nothing to do with me. This belief fuels so much of the conflict and suffering in the world. It makes it easier to judge, to compete, to harm, because we no longer recognize ourselves in the other. But when we look deeply past the masks, past the roles, we see something remarkable. Beneath all the differences, there is a shared essence. It is the same life force breathing through every human heart, the same spark of consciousness looking out through every pair of eyes. In moments of clarity, we catch glimpses of this truth. It might happen while holding a newborn baby, or standing in awe before a vast ocean, or locking eyes with a stranger and feeling an inexplicable sense of connection. For just a moment, the boundaries dissolve, and we remember, oh, we are one. The cost of forgetting. When this remembrance fades, we become trapped in illusions. We start to believe that our worth depends on what we own, what we achieve, or how others see us. We become entangled in conflicts, defending our egos as if they were our very lives. This forgetting fuels the modern world's chaos. It drives the endless consumption of material goods, the insatiable hunger for more information, the polarization that tears communities apart. We fight over ideas and identities, never realizing that beneath the surface, we are all expressions of the same source. The cost of forgetting is profound. It leaves us isolated, anxious, and disconnected not only from each other, but from ourselves. We lose our inner compass. We drift through life like ships without anchors, vulnerable to every passing storm. The moment of remembering. The good news is that no matter how far we have wandered, our true nature is never lost. It waits patiently beneath the noise, like a clear sky hidden behind clouds. Remembering begins in small, quiet ways. It might be a single deep breath, taken with full awareness. It might be sitting in silence for a few moments, letting the world's noise settle. It might be a conversation where you truly see and hear another person without judgment. In these moments, something softens. The masks loosen. The walls between self and other begin to dissolve, and we glimpse the truth that we are not separate, but deeply, profoundly connected. This remembrance is not intellectual. It's not about adopting a new belief system or reciting spiritual ideas. It's a felt experience, something you know in your bones and your heart. Wisdom and compassion return naturally. When we remember our shared essence, wisdom and compassion arise effortlessly. We no longer have to force ourselves to be kind or to do what is right. It flows naturally because we recognize that harming another is, in a very real sense, harming ourselves. This is why so many spiritual traditions emphasize inner awakening as the key to outer peace. Laws and systems can help, but without this inner remembrance, they are fragile. When people know, deeply, that they are part of one whole, their actions reflect that knowing. A society built on this understanding would look very different from the one we see today. Instead of competition, there would be collaboration. Instead of endless striving, there would be balance. Instead of shallow noise, there would be depth and meaning. Returning to the source, each of us has the power to begin this journey of remembrance right now. It doesn't require a dramatic transformation or a perfect spiritual practice. It begins with noticing. Notice the moments when you feel separate, when anger rises, when judgment takes over, when fear whispers that you must protect yourself at all costs. In those moments, pause, take a breath, ask yourself, what am I defending? Who am I, really, beneath this story? As you do this, something quiet begins to awaken. You start to sense the unchanging presence beneath all the noise. The part of you that has never been broken, never been separate, never been lost. This is your true nature, and as you remember it, you naturally begin to see it in others. Closing reflection. The forgetting of our true nature is at the root of so much of the suffering we see in the world today. But the beauty of forgetting is that it carries within it the possibility of remembering. Each time you turn inward and reconnect with the essence of who you are, you contribute to a collective healing. Each time you choose compassion over judgment, presence over performance, truth over illusion, you help weave the fabric of our shared humanity back together. One person remembering may seem small, but it is never insignificant, because remembrance spreads. It moves quietly, heart to heart, like ripples in a still pond. And one day, perhaps, we will wake to a world where we no longer fight over masks and labels, because we will have remembered, together, what was always true, that behind every face, every story, every moment of conflict, there is one life, one love, one source, and it has been us. All along, keep your light burning bright. The greatest danger we face today isn't just that society is becoming shallow, divided, or even foolish. The true danger lies in our acceptance of it, in the quiet resignation that whispers, "This is just how things are." When we stop questioning, when we stop believing that change is possible, we hand our power over without even realizing it. But here's the truth you need to remember. You are not powerless. You are not a helpless victim swept away by the current of chaos. Even in a noisy, confusing world, you still have a choice. You can choose to step out of the madness, to create a small island of clarity and depth in the midst of the storm. And it doesn't begin with grand gestures or sweeping reforms. It begins with simple, quiet acts of courage, choices so small they might seem insignificant. But they are not. Small acts, profound shifts. The first act is to pause before you react. In a world that rewards speed and outrage, pausing is revolutionary. That single breath, that moment of silence, creates space for wisdom to arise. Instead of being pulled into the drama, you can choose a different path, one rooted in clarity rather than confusion. The second act is to listen instead of argue. True listening is rare these days. Most of the time, we don't really hear each other. We simply wait for our turn to speak. But when you truly listen with your heart, as well as your ears, something magical happens. Walls begin to crumble, misunderstandings dissolve, and in their place, bridges of connection are built. The third act is to choose depth over ease. It is tempting to settle for quick answers, shallow entertainment, and surface-level conversations. But real transformation happens when we are willing to go deeper, to sit with complexity, to embrace nuance, to seek the kind of truth that cannot be captured in a headline or a soundbite. Each of these choices may feel small, but they are like stones dropped into water. The ripples spread outward in ways you cannot see, touching lives you may never meet. The power of the few history has always been changed by a small group of people willing to think differently. The majority often follow the path of least resistance, swept along by the tides of culture and habit. But the minority, the few who dare to question, to stand apart, to live by deeper truths, they are the ones who plant the seeds of revolution. Perhaps you have felt the weight of the world and thought, "What difference can I possibly make?" But never underestimate the power of a single awakened mind. One clear thought, one conscious action, can ripple outward and ignite a wave of change far greater than you can imagine. Think of a single candle lit in a dark room. The darkness doesn't fight back. It doesn't need to be pushed away. It simply disappears in the presence of light. In the same way, when enough individuals choose to live with awareness and integrity, the collective darkness, ignorance, division, manipulation begins to dissolve on its own, becoming a light in the darkness. You don't have to fix the entire world. That burden is too heavy for any one person to carry. Instead, focus on tending to the light within you. Your light is your awareness, your compassion, your commitment to truth. It is the way you choose to speak, to act, to live each day. When you nurture this inner flame, it naturally shines outward, guiding others without force or judgment. And here's the beautiful thing. When enough individual lights come together, the darkness cannot survive. It has nowhere to hide. A single star may seem small against the vast night sky, but 1,000 stars create a constellation, a map to guide the lost home, a gentle call to action. So as you leave these words behind and return to the noise of the world, Remember this. You do not need to wait for society to awaken before you begin. You are society. You are part of the great unfolding story. Every time you pause instead of react, listen instead of argue, choose depth instead of ease, you are planting seeds of transformation. You may never see the full forest that grows from those seeds, but trust that they matter. They always matter. Perhaps, just perhaps, the quiet choice you make today will inspire someone else tomorrow, and their choice will inspire another and another, until one day, a wave of awakening rises strong enough to shift the course of history. Closing reflection. The world doesn't need more noise, more anger, more chaos. It needs lights, small, steady lights, carried by people who have remembered what truly matters. Be one of those lights. Tend to your inner flame with care. Protect it from the winds of distraction and division. And when you feel ready, let it shine, not to force others awake, but to offer a gentle reminder that truth and wisdom still exist. Because when enough lights shine together, the darkness doesn't stand a chance. You don't need to save the entire world. You only need to keep your own light burning, and trust that its glow will help guide others home.